Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Trying to get my angles correct here. Okay, I think that's a little bit better. Yep, I think that's okay. That's
Great.
better. Much better.
Thank you again so much for joining us on our live today to answer some questions.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So to start off, I just wanted to kind of ask you how Black Girl on Campus came about. So how did you kind of fund this company meant to educate and like help Black girls get into college?
Well, I was a Black girl in college, obviously, and I was actually a first generation college student. My parents didn't know what to do to help me, and I figured it out. And I didn't have my guidance counselor there to help me. Unfortunately, she had gotten sick during my senior year, and I just kind of had to figure it out on my own. And I am so grateful that I did. I loved my time in college. It was awesome. I'm an alum of the University at Albany in upstate New York. And after graduating, I started working and I went into the entertainment industry and I had a great career there. And then I left after several years and started working in a nonprofit environment. And one day I was just in my house laying on my couch and I got the idea of Black Girl on Campus to help young Black girls who are like me, first generation, but young Black girls, period, who don't know where to go, don't know where to start, and need some help. I'm a firm believer and there's no reason to reinvent the wheel and stumble over things again. So take my expertise and my knowledge and share it with others. So that's how Black Girl on Campus came about and why.
Definitely. I totally agree. I know my parents, my mother was definitely a first generation college student, so she had to figure out that process on her own too. And she's been very instrumental. I myself am a senior in high school this year, so she's been very instrumental in helping me through my college process with her knowledge.
Mm-hmm. And where are you going? Where are you going? Where do you want to go? Let's ask that. Where do you want to go since you're a senior?
My dream school is NYU, New York University. So I will be EDing there hopefully sometime in the next 1 or 2 months.
Yep. Well, good luck. That's a great school.
So why specifically Black girls? Just because you identify yourself with them and feel like that's your area of expertise, or?
Yes, yes, in part, because where I currently work, I have a 9 to 5 still, and where I currently work, it's a predominantly African American or people of color environment, and I have started to mentor several young women in that space, and I know that that is my experience as a Black woman and understanding the disparities that we're up against as a community, period, and needing the support and additional insights that we might not get anywhere else. So why not start working with Black girls? The information that I give is universal, but certainly there are some things specific to the experience of African American girls and boys that are different than others. So I'm very passionate and as a social justice advocate. So that's how I just totally focus on Black girls specifically. And it's girls, as people always ask, why not boys too? Because again, my experience is as a young Black girl and as a woman. So I'm sure that there's some things that I can say to young Black boys, but there's Black men that can do that too. So
Definitely. So in light of, the last few months and in recent events, do you believe that predominantly white institutions will start to show more diversity and support to their African American students?
That is definitely my hope. I have a very good friend who is actually she has a business and she works in the DEI and B. She added the word B for belonging. So diversity, inclusion, diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging is what she calls it. And she's seen over the last several months, her business is starting to boom because people's minds are starting to be opened up. And I am on the board of directors for the University at Albany, for the Alumni Association. And I have come to see too that when we raise our voices, because there are a couple other African Americans on the board, when we raise our voices, the Alumni Association is more, at this time, I feel definitely more open to hearing and listening. There have been some changes that they've made because we have started to speak out and because they've asked us questions and they're interested in changing. And the University of Albany is definitely a predominantly white institution. So it is our time, I think, to not kind of just expect change to occur because people are watching the news and see the things that are happening regarding racial unrest, but also to raise our voices and to open our mouths and come to the table with viable solutions as to how companies, colleges, small businesses, wherever it is, can start to become more inclusive in what it is that they offer and what it is that they do.
Definitely, definitely. So, what are some of the steps that you believe schools should take for their African American students to feel more welcome and like they have a safe space?
That's a very interesting question because it's something that I'm in a sorority and I became a member through at Albany. So I'm very much in touch with a lot of my sorority sisters that are still on campus or recent graduates. And I have heard over the years that they definitely feel the African American students felt maligned, not having the support that they needed. If something happened, racism, happening. And excuse me, I think that what the universities can do, they have, number one, it starts with training your staff, training the people that interact with students each and every day, be it from admissions recruiters and representatives to the people that your professors that are in the classrooms, and just people that work in the different departments, the secretaries in the departments, to understand that the experience of each person, of each culture, of each race is very different, and to be open to what is different from you. I need to be open to what a Asian person might experience in the world and not just say, well, it's this way or the highway. So I really think that it really starts with some real serious training and courageous conversations amongst the university leadership and faculty to really start to try to make change to be more inclusive and embrace the different experiences that people of color come to your university campus with, because it's very varied. Everyone's not living in a suburb with a white picket fence. So you need to understand that people have very different lifestyles from where they're coming from. And I was, interestingly, I'm just going to jump off for a second. I was on a call last night with someone that I know, a friend, and she's an educator, and she teaches immigrant students. And she was talking a lot about how in this whole virtual world with the students and trying to teach, a lot of the students don't put their cameras on. And I was like, why do you think that is? And she said, a lot of students are in their homes. They live with maybe a bunch of people. They don't want people to see what's going on around them. And or maybe they can't even hear because there's so many people, or out there outside is a lot happening. So, I mean, I kind of thought that was, that was part of the answer as well. But the biggest thing is no longer a catchword. Let's say that. Saying diversity and inclusion is not just a catchword. It's things that schools and just the community at large and the world needs to put into action.
Definitely, definitely. And I know, that was a huge thing that came up at the beginning of COVID-19 was with students learning, and you saw the different, how one group of students was, they were houses or lake houses or at their home, and they had more access to resources like their computers. They had better like laptops and other things to help them transition to learning process. And then you saw people who maybe lived in a smaller home with a lot of family members, and they had to work with trying to concentrate while maybe you had mom and dad and sister and brother running around in the background.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think that, yes, it was it was a hurry, and people couldn't, the teachers couldn't, the administrators couldn't get up to speed fast enough for everyone. But I think that in this new reality that we're living in, because it is a new normal, I don't necessarily believe we're going to be going back to what we're used to anytime really soon. That's even more important. And I think that the teachers and educators and college professors and college administration has been able to learn that in this very fast way, what they're really dealing with as it relates to their students and their that they're the students that they're trying to teach. That there's a lot happening when those students are not in your school building from 8 to 4.
Yeah, definitely. So where do you believe this disparity between African American students to white students at these predominantly white institutions come from?
Well, I think it's, let's face it, there are a lot of students that go away to college, and if you look at what underserved communities look like in the United States, right? It's, while I'm not saying that white people are not, poor or impoverished, the majority of those types of communities have people of color in them, Black, Latino, who are in underserved communities where unemployment, housing, redlining, food deserts, lack of resources in school, lack of programming, after school programming, lack of computer labs or enough computers for the school. That is really what is happening in underserved communities where the demographic is mostly Black and brown students for the most part, especially when you get into the urban areas, of course. So when you start there and realizing that those communities also don't necessarily have community centers, which are beacons of just support in our communities for students to get access to a computer, to get access to some outside activities. But those types of centers in urban communities, a lot of urban communities, I'm here in New York, so, being closed down and students not having access to that either. So that's just like the tip of the iceberg when you live in an environment like that. And then so you make it through and you get through high school, and then you go off to college or a predominantly white institution, and you're still up against that in a lot of ways, when you're one of the few African Americans or just it's a predominantly white institution, hence the name, versus HBCU. So you still are experiencing it, but maybe not as much, or you're just pushing through because you understand. And then you leave, you manage to graduate, and you go out into society. And as we've seen over the last several months, the racism that still prevails as you have a college degree and you still are out here and then of course there's that other segment of students that don't make it because they do go to school, but then they're up against like financial challenges and they can't finish school,
Right.
which happens a lot in the African American community and Latino community. So it's just racism is just such a prevalent thing that I'm so glad that a light has been shown on it now in these last several months for people to understand and start to even try to realize like what it is that Black and brown people live up against, be it in the college environment, in high school, in elementary school, I don't care where it is, how schools aren't funded correctly, how students are just at such a disadvantage, and how they still have to make a way and how they do. So again, the diversity and inclusion just has to really be put into action. It's not just about words anymore and saying you think that you are being diverse because you're not necessarily. in most instances. You're not.
So as you kind of mentioned, part of this disparity comes from, affordability and being able to afford colleges. So I know a lot of talk or some talk has come up around community colleges right now and seeing those as a more viable option for people because, they cost considerably less than maybe a Harvard or a Stanford or a Brown. So I wanted to get your opinion on the education difference between community colleges and say like a Harvard or a Brown.
I was on an interview. I did an interview a couple weeks ago, and I was talking about this very thing and how community college, back in my day, and people, when I was in college and going to college, people used to say, oh, you don't want to go to a community college. It's like the 13th grade. Like, you're not going to school, really. And no, that's not the case. Community colleges give students like a really robust education. And especially when you're not 100% sure what you want to do, it is helpful to go get your feet wet in the college environment, and then also get a couple credits for less money, because they're always going to be less money, and figure out what you want to do, because the first couple of years in college anyway are like, you're doing prereqs. So you're not jumping in certain majors. Most majors you're just doing prereqs. So it's like you're not jumping into your major immediately. So do those at a cheaper rate at a community college and then transfer in, and you're still going to get the degree from Harvard or Brown or UPenn or Albany or, Spelman or whatever, but you've saved a whole bunch of money on the upfront, especially in this COVID time, where I think it's something that students really should consider, because it's just so much. You don't want to pay, because a lot of schools aren't giving refunds or trying to lower their prices because you're learning virtually. So why would you spend all this money in your first couple of years to learn virtually when you could do the same learning virtually at a community college for prerequisites?
Definitely. So do you believe that Ivy Leagues are like worth reputation and worth the money that has been built up behind them, that's been, advertised to students over the years? A lot of people, especially when you're young and you're like, oh, when you're like in the sixth grade and somebody asks you, what in college? And you're like, Harvard. And you may not know anything about Harvard, but you're just saying Harvard because it's the name. So do you believe that these Ivy League schools are worth the reputation?
I have a friend who went to an Ivy. She's a graduate of UPenn, and she walked out of school with a whole lot of debt. And she also, though, because when people see those types of schools on your resume, it is impressive and it is a name dropper. But the fact is that there are so many other real great schools. Like Albany is one of the top 3 state schools in New York. And when people see that, they are also like, oh, she went to Albany, or he went to Albany, or he went to Stony Brook, or she went to Binghamton. No, not to shade the other SUNY schools, but like those, when they see that, it's like people are like, oh, it's kind of, it's people are impressed by that. Do I believe? Yes, that people are definitely impressed by a Princeton or a Yale or a Harvard, or even when you yourself said, NYU. And I was like, okay, it is an impressive name, but just because something is impressive or costs some more money, it doesn't necessarily mean that the education is that much greater. Because, once what you learn in those 4 years, you're learning what you're learning. But the real education also comes when you get out and you start to get a job, and people are still impressed by the school name, but it's like the school name takes less and less precedence over, okay, what do you really know, honestly, about your career, what you're trying to do? And also another big thing, and I'm sure that people recognize this, is not so much what do you know, but who do you know too. That's a big thing. Learning how to network while just across your life is so important, even in high school, to be able to network with teachers, or when you're in college to network with professors, or to figure your way out, to get internships, to get a job. All of those things make a lot more of an impact than saying, I have this degree from whatever school it might be. And then you're walking around with, tons of debt. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Tons of debt.
So, kind of transitioning over to more like the application process, do you think that waiving this year's SATs and ACTs, a lot of these schools have become test optional now, will kind of hurt or help people in this year's process?
Absolutely help. I am not a proponent of the standardized testing, ACT, SAT. I'm not, because I don't think there's no way to get a breadth and understanding of a student because of a test score. If even standardized tests, or even sometimes like just certain tests in school, like the Regents. I was in that same conversation I was having last night with the educator. She was so excited because the Regents had been waived this year, and I said, yeah, because you put all this pressure on students to learn a certain thing in a certain way, which in a lot of instances you probably won't even use when you get into college, or even, or bigger than that, out of college. So I think it is going to help. It's going to free up a lot of students to have more time to do other things that do make a difference in the ultimate of getting accepted into college, working on essays, or researching, or doing community service. They're doing service and not in, some test prep course because they need to do it, because schools are looking for well-rounded students. They're not just looking for, oh, you got this, oh my gosh, you got this great grade on the this great score on the SAT, and then the rest of your resume is blank because you really haven't had a whole lot of time, because you've been so focused on SAT or studying or getting, honors classes, or whatever it may be. So I absolutely think the waiving of the SAT and ACT is just is a wonderful thing. I mean, who knows what the College Board is going to do with themselves now that doesn't exist. But I do think that it is just so helpful to students, because there's so many different ways and better ways to showcase who you are better outside of a test grade.
So do you think this is just going to be a 2020 to 2021 year only, or do you think they will stay waived? Schools are going to start seeing, these SATs. I've seen research on saying how the SATs are kind of biased in the way that they're worded. And not only that, but, you have to pay $60, I believe, to go and take it. And, some kids go and take it 3, 4, 5 times, and paying that $60 over and over again isn't a problem. But others don't have the same access to the money where you can take it 3, 5 times and super score your score. So do you think colleges are starting to see that and they'll kind of waive them permanently, or this is a temporary thing?
Honestly, I do believe that it's a temporary thing. I think because a lot of things happened during this COVID time that you would never have expected to happen. And, just various things besides that, like people not paying their rent, or just whatever it might be, like, utility companies saying, oh, don't worry about it. Like so many huge things happened. So I do think that it will be temporary. But what I will say is that, well, I'll say that next. It is a money-making. You just outlined how much of a money-making business it is. If you're constantly, taking it to get a better score, and if you end up taking it 3 times, that's $180 right there that they have made off of one student. And yes, they waive some fees sometimes. Yes, of course. But the bigger thing is that they are making money. It doesn't exist for nothing. So, and then schools, how they use it is if, the higher their SAT score is to get in, then the higher that potentially they can charge, because it's that much more competitive, that they can charge for tuition to get in, because it's like, oh my gosh, you have to have X SAT or X ACT to get in. This school must be really good. So it justifies paying 30, 40 grand a year because you have to go there, or 60 even in some instances when you're talking about private institutions, and more. So what I do think, though, families and students, and the Spark of Change is a perfect institution to try to do it, is to raise your voices and speak with your your local government officials, and push the envelope to get it completely waived and just thrown out the window forever. Is it something that I think is going to happen? No, probably not. That's going to happen quickly. Let me say that. Do I think it'll happen quickly? You might still be working on something like this when you're 30 years old. But the only way, like I said earlier, is to get change to happen is to raise your voice, to protest, to write letters, to hold government officials accountable for what it is that works best for you and what you're looking to see. So while I don't think it'll go away, forever, just because, I do think that there are ways to make it go away if we really want it to. And it's in the hands of, of the constituents.
Okay, so what is the most common mistake that you kind of see on a college application? So not even just, your common app, but as the application as a whole.
The biggest mistake I see on college applications, on scholarship applications, on employment applications, is that people don't follow directions. It's that simple. They won't sign where they're supposed to sign. They won't answer all the questions that they're supposed to answer. They won't answer in the college environment. They don't answer fully the essay question that's asked. They don't submit the required number of recommendations, or they maybe submit too many. It's like they're asking for 4 for a reason. Don't send 10. Like, follow the directions as given. Don't try to not answer, because that's just one way to get your application tossed immediately. No, and that moves on further into the employment environment. When you graduate and start looking for jobs, when people are asking you, prime example, when employers are asking you for something, follow it. I have a sorority sister now who's interviewing with Amazon, and it's a huge deal. And working for Amazon would be major, especially in the role that she's looking to do. And she was asking some of us, like, oh, what should I wear, like, for the interview? And some people were saying, oh, wear a jacket and a suit. And she was saying that, well, they say that they're just a very casual environment, a very casual company. Even their upper echelon leaders are, jeans, t-shirt, sweatshirt, whatever. And she was like, the person that I'm speaking to was like, that's how they dress. So, don't come over the top and some suit and stuff. And then some people were still pushing her. Some of the sorority sisters was like, well, still wear like a blazer. And it's like, if the lady in HR told you to not come overly dressed, don't come in a suit. I mean, go as she's telling you. She works there, she knows. So it's just across the board. It's not just starting out when you're filling out an application to go work at McDonald's when you're in high school and they're asking you, what something. I mean, I don't know, like how. Well, I wouldn't use that example, but I want to say, like, have you ever been convicted of a crime? Not that, but like whatever it is that they ask you, answer all the questions. The questions are on an application for a reason. So follow those, answer every single question as answered, and do as it's being explained to do.
Definitely. So what would you say students should kind of stay away from on their Common App? I know I've seen some stuff where they're like, oh, college admissions officers do this all the time. This isn't really going to make you stand out.
So what should they stay away from?
Yeah, like what would you say would be, when you're writing your Common App, what would you say would be topics that you would kind of warn to stay away from?
I think the biggest thing with the Common App is to be yourself, to be honest, to be transparent with who you are, and just to be honest, because it's not so much about following, stay away from one thing and do another, as much as it's just be you, because that's the thing that's going to make you stand out. Don't, be over the top with whatever it is that you're, thinking is going to make someone impressed. It's, if you've put in the work, you've done what you're supposed to do, you feel you've done everything that you can, that's all that you can present. I remember, because I oversee scholarship at my place of employment, my 9 to 5. And years ago, we still have the scholarship, and a young man came in, and he was one 100% himself. Like, he wasn't putting on any airs. He wasn't like disrespectful or ridiculous, but he was, and I know him, so I could tell that he is being himself. He's not coming in here trying to impress us in any extra way to get this $5,000. And while he didn't win the $5,000 big prize, he did come in second place over a young man who went to an impressive high school, came into the interview with a suit on, had an impressive resume of things that he had done in high school. And not to say that he wasn't good, but it was just like seeing the realness of that other young man that was the thing that took it over the top. So I don't think it's something to stay away from as much as it's just to be you.
Definitely. Another piece of advice I hope you have for our senior audience. How would you advise that we kind of either narrow down to our perfect college, or like what college we want to go to, or even for those who don't know where to start in finding their perfect college?
Well, the thing that I work a lot with students on is to try to identify your purpose and your passion. Whatever it is, something that you want to do, that you would get up and do, you just love doing it. You get up and do it for free if you could. And when you do that, then you're able to really figure out, where should I go to school? What career path should I be trying to take? I mean, if I was thinking, because back when I was younger, I was like, I want to be a journalist. I want to be an anchor, like a news anchor. If I really knew what I was doing, I wouldn't have gone to Albany, because they don't have a program. They didn't then, and they don't now, to do that. But I had to cobble together, once I got to Albany, ways to kind of try to learn how to be a journalist, like, write for the newspaper, or I worked with the campus radio station, those types of things. I probably would have gone to FAMU, who has a huge journalism program, and I have a sorority sister who went there, and she's been a journalist for 15 years, so she knows what she's doing. So I would say, I always talk about identifying your passion, your purpose in life, because that is the thing that's going to be able to inform you. Okay, I want to be, I don't know, a doctor is too easy, but I want to be an engineer, for argument's sake. What type of engineer? Number one, because it's just, you can't just say it flat like that. There's so many different ones. So what schools have great engineering programs that fit in line with what it is, the type of engineer I want to be, and fit in my budget, because that's a big thing, fit in my family's budget, and fit all the other criteria that go along with the type of school that you would want to go to. So once you get that, like, your potential passion in life, and I'm not saying career path, because when I was younger, I said I wanted to be a doctor. I'm horrible in math and science, so there's no way I could be a doctor or anything, but that's when I was younger. And as I went along, I had to figure, really, when you get into like 11th and 12th grade, I feel like you have a little bit of an idea of like really where you're trying, what makes you tick, what you really like to do. You like to work with kids? Do you want to be, there's so many things outside of, to work with kids, be a teacher, be a guidance counselor, be a principal of a school. But you don't graduate college and jump into being a principal. Like, there's certain steps that you have to do. Right. So identify your passion and your purpose. And then that way you can totally figure out what school you should go to. That's a start to figure out what school you should go to.
And as for our ninth graders, I know there's kind of like two sets of ninth graders. One that's like, ninth grade year doesn't matter. And then there's like, oh my gosh, I only have this many years to get to what am I going to do? What advice would you have for our ninth graders? Like, what should they kind of concern them with? freshman year? What should they be thinking about as they enter their freshman year?
First off, colleges look at your high school career. So ninth grade, I know now, like when I was applying to school, high school started at 10th grade, but now it's really more and more, it's ninth grade. So they're looking from ninth to 12th. So whatever it is that you're doing in ninth grade, grades, activities, all of that counts toward your ultimate college application time. So in ninth grade, I would absolutely be focusing on just starting to do community service to get in that mind frame of, volunteering and serve because you want to serve. Don't serve because it's like, oh, I just need to get, 40 credits of service in my freshman year. Serve. And again, you can serve in potentially something that you're interested in. It might be that's your passion. So you can start to see, do I really like to do this? Do I really like working with kids? Do I really like working with senior citizens? Like, seriously. And then you can, make the adjustments from there if necessary. So I would start to work on community service. I would even start going to college fairs and starting to look at schools to get an idea of, like, what is this really, like, just to get some brochures, maybe a school that you've heard about, like you said earlier, like people hear Harvard and Yale or whatever. Get a couple of brochures, look at them, research them, and all schools. I'm not just saying like name schools, because there are some great smaller schools. I know a young man right now that's going to Goucher College in Maryland. I never heard of that school in my life, but he is really excelling. He loves it. He's a writer, and he's just really able to express himself in a way through his writing through that school that is tremendous to watch. So I would say those two things, and I actually have a checklist, and if there's anyone that wants to DM me or DM you and ask for it, I have no problem sending it to them, because it just outlines what like 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade checklist. But those are the two things that jump out to me immediately, is to attend college fairs, just to get your ears and your ears and your feet wet, and then also to start to do community service. And start to, also another thing, start to take it serious. Take 9th grade as serious as you would 12th grade. Mm-hmm. Because I just said they look at the breadth. They're not just saying, you mess up all in 9th grade and then you have to spend all that time too trying to build up your GPA, build up whatever it is to make yourself look better once you start applying.
Definitely. So I know we were kind of talking about the SAT earlier and how the college admission process. So when would you say should be the first time that someone takes a full-length SAT?
First semester junior year.
Okay.
First semester junior year, to get an understanding of what it is. Like, what is this? How hard is this? And be prepared to be done with it first semester senior year. Like, if you have to take it, of course, in like, your second semester of senior year, yeah, but like there's so much going on in your senior year between applying to colleges, applying to for scholarships, doing college tours, doing so many different things, potentially interviews for scholarships, interviews for colleges, whatever. You don't want to be bogged down with saying, oh my gosh, I have to take the SAT again, or the SAT or the ACT in March. Like, you don't want to have that, that weight on you, because you didn't start out taking it to be prepared to, because if you take it in junior year, the first semester, then you can take it again in the second semester if you need to, and really having a full understanding of what type of exam this is. But gratefully, you don't have to do that this year. So, but moving forward, if it comes back, yes.
And then what would you find is the best resource for SAT prep in general? So I know, a lot of people say, they have SAT prep tutors, but I know there's also less expensive resources such as Khan Academy, or even just purchasing an SAT book from Barnes and Nobles. So what would you say is kind of the best resource for high school students to use to prep for the test?
I think that honestly, it really depends on the type of student. I don't think that there's one best thing, because people all learn differently. So if your child, like somebody like me, when I was younger, I probably would benefit from a more one-on-one teaching environment, be it a tutor or of course, I know that there's this organization in New York and Queens that work with, it's called the You Can Go to College Committee, and they do test prep. And then they also do like a college tour. I doubt they're doing it this year, of course, but they also do a college tour where students have the opportunity to get admitted to, I think it's pretty much a Black college tour too, but they can get admitted to college like right on the spot.
Oh,
if they participate in this program, because it's on Saturdays, and then go to the college fair. The college tour. So I probably would have benefited from something like that. But then if you have a student that's really great on their own and can study on their own, then, a book might work, and you might not have to put all that money into an actual paid for course, or, you can do something like Khan Academy. So it really depends on the student's way of learning and what is going to be the best. There is no one thing that's going to work for everybody.
got it. And our final question of the day would just be, what is your number one piece of advice to students applying to college?
I actually, because you had said you were going to answer this, so I had actually written a list, and I'm going to give you 9 cool things to really focus on
Okay.
while you're, wanting to apply, or tips to getting in. So let me get my laptop together over here. So I already said it. Number 1 is doing community service. I don't do it through the duration of your high school career. Don't just do it in 9th grade, then all of a sudden you're scrambling, doing it again in 12th grade. They're looking at that. They see that, oh, well, 9th grade, like, she was doing all this great stuff. And then it's like, she didn't do anything for 10th and 11th. And now she was like a mad dash in, September, October, November, December of her senior year. So do it the duration of your high school career. And like I said, do it in things that you want to do, not because you're just doing it to get these community service hours. The next thing I would say is meet with your guidance counselor and key teachers throughout your high school career, because you could ask them for like just information about college. They all went to college, so you can ask them about their college experience. Like, what do they think? What do they have ideas about college, or college, this is what you want to do, and do they know of where you should go, maybe? And also the bigger thing is that you're building those relationships, and I talked about it earlier, in networking. And when it comes time to have to ask someone for a college recommendation, who do you think you can ask? Those teachers that you and the guidance counselor, the teachers that you've made relationships with, and they'll be more than happy to do it because you've made a sincere relationship. Number 3 is to decrease your stress, start as early as possible. So if you're listening to this and you're in 9th grade, start the steps of looking to and thinking about where you want to apply to college. As I said earlier, when you get into senior year, there is so much, and also you're trying to worry about your prom, you're trying to worry about senior trip. You don't want to be struggling and trying to figure out, where am I going? Where am I going to apply? Like, it's just like a brand new thing. I say this about, when things are, be it like Christmas, like, especially like in where I work right now, sometimes it's like just like a mad dash when it's like Christmas, we have to do something, or we do a big event now in September for work, and it always seems like it's like everyone's crazy. Oh my gosh, because they start planning in like June or July. I'm like, it comes the same time every year. Like, why are we here? Like, you want to apply to college. You want to go to college. Don't wait until October of your senior year to start figuring out, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? Because then that's like just a whole level of stress that you don't want to put on yourself. Number 4, know the cost of college so you can finish. I have seen too many students that love a school, want to go to a school, go to the school, and then come back after their freshman year because their family can't afford it anymore. So that's a unfortunate thing, and it's a tragedy. You know, it doesn't need to be that way. You don't need to go to a college that costs so much. There are 4,000 colleges, over 4,000 colleges in the United States. You don't need to go to this one school that you're just so laser focused on. Like, I was laser focused on Penn State, and my parents told me, no, ma'am, you're not going out of town. You're not going out of state. It's too expensive. We live in New York. You're going to be an out of state student. No, ma'am, you're not doing it. And while I was like, what do you mean? Like, what? I have the grades. I know I could get in. It'd be great. Can't you see me there? Yeah, sure, we can see you there, but we don't see the money there. Like, we're not going to pay all that to do that. I went to Albany. It was fine. I had a great time. So know the cost so you know that you can finish. Number 5 is to complete the FAFSA for sure with your parents. Don't sit up there trying to do it yourself because so much information is needed from your parents. Don't let them throw their tax returns at you so you can put it in, because it's also a time to have the conversation about truly how much money can your family afford to spend to send you to college. So I always encourage families to sit down and do the FAFSA together, because you never know how much money you'll get, or just different grants or whatever based on completing it. And then also, so the student really understands the concept. Like, you know, students will come, like in my mind with Penn State, it was like, why can't I go there? Okay, yeah, it's 20 grand. And like, but it's like, I'm sure so many families, so many children have heard. Like, I heard when I was younger, when you say, oh my gosh, I want to go to McDonald's. Can we go to McDonald's today? So your parents are like, do you have McDonald's money? Do you have 20 grand for Penn State? Do you have, at the time, do you have 50 grand for going to some HBCU or some private college? Do you have that? Because it's going to have to be paid. And just as a little sidebar, I know that loans are something that students sometimes have to do. I can't stand loans because, I mean, it happens, but it's like, it happens more often than not. But those loans have to be paid back, and they're very unforgiving. Yes, you can defer and defer, but as you defer, interest accrues. And there's going to come the time that you have to pay it back. I have a friend right now, yes, he's younger than me, but he has like $170,000 in loans. And he's in his like late 20s, and you're not going to make right out the gate out of school $170,000 to pay them. So keep in mind, you know, that loans are an expensive thing. There are over $7 billion in scholarship and grant money out there. It takes some time. I get it, but try to find them. Apply to scholarships. Don't just let it lay on the table. People getting full rides through scholarships is a real thing because they put in the work. And every Sunday, I've started to post a scholarship. So check out the page on Sundays and you'll see a scholarship there. And I do the looking. So, and they're like, you know, it could be like $1,000, $2,500. It all adds up. So do the FAFSA. Number 6. Number 6, visit virtually or in person, but probably virtually, your final list of colleges or universities, just so you can really make the decision. I mean, I went to Albany sight unseen, but I don't really encourage people to do that because you might go someplace and be like, this is whack. Like, I don't like any of this. So you can go and visit them in person or virtually, because, you know, you can do it virtually, then do that. So you can really make an informed decision about ultimately where you're going to go, and it's going to be the best fit for you. Number 7 is, attend college fairs and meet recruiters. And this is probably for students who are like 9th to 11th. Go there so you can meet them, because the recruiters at the table are a lot of the times the same people that are looking at your application. So if it's a school that you really want to go to, like Mia, you really want to go to the NYU, get on a virtual college fair, meet that person who's doing at the NYU virtual table, or at a table for NYU. And then number 8, follow up with the recruiters. Again, it's networking. Ask them for a business card, and then follow up with them. So when they say, oh, hey, I met her and you remind them in the email, it's like, oh yeah, that's right, I do remember her. And when your application comes through, you can drop them an email and say, oh, I just sent my application in, and I just wanted to let you know, or whatever. And then they'll probably keep an eye out for it, and then they'll give a special look at it to say, oh yeah, I met her at that college fair. She was, she asked some great questions and all that stuff, and then she followed up with me. She was in touch with me over this whole process. And again, like I said, networking is the thing. And then finally is just to spend some sufficient time developing your college essay. Your essay is really where you get the opportunity to shine and show who you are, and be as transparent as you want to be as honest as you feel you want to be. Don't be rote and just kind of like showing through that you're just kind of doing this because like, oh, I got to write this essay. So, or just take some other essay, especially with a school you're really interested in. You just take some essay from another school and you just kind of doctor it up to make sense for this. No, really put some time into it, especially for schools that you really want to go to, and help, just shine through that, because they're reading your words. They're not reading something else. So those are, 9 things I would suggest as tips to get into college.
Thank you so much. Those were very helpful, especially senior myself. I'm like, I should try some of those.
Good. I'm glad. I'm so glad that I was able to help. And I also have right now a mini course. The link is in my bio if you go over there, to just like how to basically like college fairs 101 and how to be a college fair champion and learn how to just walk these steps. Some of them I mentioned, others I didn't. Just how to really shine through at a college fair. Questions to ask the recruiters to make them see you and make you shine through, and they'd be like, oh, you're just not asking a basic question. I've done, like I said, for Albany, being on the Alumni Association, I have done college fairs for them, and I've seen students come up to the table and it's like kind of the same questions all the time, and I'm like, there's so many other questions you can answer. That's why I ask to get an answer to. So I encourage people to check out that course and learn a little bit more, and the checklist people can download and stuff like that when they get the course.
Definitely. I personally just want to say I very much admire the work that you're doing, and especially just making this college information so accessible to people. I've been fortunate enough to say, I have pretty good access to college admissions information, but I know that's not the situation for everybody. So your page, what you're doing, that's helping a lot of people, and I admire it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me to come onto your platform today. I love what it is that you are doing, and your partner, and and knowing now, because I didn't know, as we were speaking, folks, and transparency, I didn't know that she was in high school too. So to be doing this as a high school student is like so major. So kudos to you, and just knowing that you do something like this, I know that you're just probably knocking it out of the park in so many other different ways. So just continue to do what you're doing, and again, thank you for inviting me on.
Thank you for joining us. And to all of our followers, please go check out her page. I believe it's
bgoc online.
Yes, okay.
bgoc online.
Go check out her page for some more helpful college tips and information. And thank you again so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Have a great Saturday.
You too. Bye.
Bye.